today, I know a lot of you guys are already accepting insurance, but the goal today is really to answer any and all questions you guys have on accepting insurance. And so I know for me, there was just so much uncertainty surrounding it. And I'm hopeful today that you guys will, you'll get all of your questions answered, and you'll also know if it's a good fit for you, because for many people, sorry, there's too many things going on this screen. For many people, it's not a good fit. And I want to talk about why and who I think it's not a good fit for. So I'm really excited to present on this topic because I feel like one of the biggest things holding a lot of you guys back from accepting insurance is this concept of fear, the unknown and uncertainty. I think dietitians and CNSs are allergic to uncertainty, and we're going to talk more about that today. So we're going to spend some time kind of on the subjective side. I know a lot of what we do is very objective in the world of insurance, but I do want to take some time to really review, like, is this a good fit for you and why it might not be? Okay. Obviously, we're going to go over the benefits of accepting insurance, but I also want to take some time and talk about the drawbacks, obviously the downsides, because you have to be the right type of dietitian, the right type of CNS for this to be the direction that makes sense for you. So talking about the drawbacks, I don't think is a disservice. I much rather go deeper on that than the benefits, because I think it's important to know what you're signing up for. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how insurance works, and then obviously best practices. So meet baby Amy. That's my husband to the right, at his 40th birthday. So that is 10 years ago this year. And when I first started my private practice, I was actually directly out of my internship in 2007. So I went straight from my internship right into private practice. And I didn't know my arm from my asshole. And I'm sincere when I say that. I credentialed with insurance companies as soon as I was able to get my verification. And so back then, obviously, I didn't know what I was doing. This girl right in front of the screen, I want to be very clear, because a lot of you guys know my highlights. You guys see my highlight reel on Instagram, but you don't really know, Instagram didn't exist in 2007, but I don't think you know the girl that you're looking at on this screen. So this girl was probably working 3 or 4 jobs, just like all of us. I was teaching in academia full-time. I was part-time at Yale working in the diabetes center. I was probably working at another university, and then I was running my private practice on the side. Most of my days would start at 4 a.m. I would go to the gym. I'd leave the house around 4:20. I'd work out at the gym, go to Yale, swipe out at Yale, and then go to one of my other 3 jobs. And so I, like everybody, nobody handed me, this practice that I just opened up, and I didn't hang a shingle. And I spent a lot of time building my practice. So if you are there now, I hear you, I see you. Like, I'm sure a lot of you guys know, like, what it's like to get up when the sun, when it's dark, and then you come home only to empty out your lunchbox, repack all your dirty gym clothes, put out those Danceco clogs to go back into clinical. So I worked multiple jobs. In fact, I probably worked more jobs than most people, have, like, in their entire career in the first 10 years of my career. So in 2009, we started to build out our team, and just 2 years into my practice, we were already hiring new dietitians. So like I said, for many of you guys, if you don't know me, I also run a group private practice. We are a hybrid practice, meaning we have both in-person and telehealth visits. We see a wide variety of patients, everything but eating disorders. And I personally oversee every single claim, all the patients, all of the things. So yes, I am a business coach for amazing dietitians and CNSs, but I am actively seeing patients, not a ton, And I'm also, overseeing and doing the billing for my practice. So I really think that it's important, that people understand that concept, because what we're going to talk about today is not theory. This is like real reality in terms of like what I go through on a day-to-day basis. So I really want to drill down on this part. Okay. Does accepting insurance make sense for you? And I want to talk about the why. So I have the pleasure of working with thousands of dietitians each year in my coaching programs. And I can count on one hand and maybe on three fingers the dietitians who were not successful in my program. And I could probably tell you right out of the gates, the reason being that their why was very different than most dietitians. So for me, my why I accept insurance is it increases accessibility to care. It allows me to help people who need our services, not just the ones that can afford them. And it allows us to elevate our field among all the noise, right? So it really differentiates us, but we are also the nutrition experts. And for me, that is super important to get us in front of, obviously, people that need our services. And so if you do not feel this vibe, I still love you. But if your why is not increasing accessibility to care, if your why is, I want to make money, I want to make money quick, I want to hit six figures, those things will all happen. I can almost guarantee you anything on a long enough time horizon will happen. But if your why isn't deeper than I want to make money, or, it's going to be an everyday struggle, because this shit is hard. I will not sugarcoat accepting insurance. I literally have no regrets about doing this and all that I've been through. But if you don't have a why that is bigger than you and your need to make money, when shit gets hard, it's going to be easy to bolt. Okay. The second piece, even though it's listed three, I want to talk about mindset and personality. Okay. Because what's really important, and if you are accepting insurance and you've already credentialed yourself, you have learned that sometimes insurance defies gravity. And so, like I said, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And some days, if not many days, your practice is going to feel like a flaming dumpster fire of shit. And no matter what you do, some days are just going to feel hard. And so it's going to be a different type of hard, because you're working for yourself, you're working towards financial freedom, which is important, and you're working to have an impact with the people that you serve. But your mindset is literally 100% going to dictate whether or not you are successful in your insurance-based practice, because no matter where you are in your journey on this call, in order to be successful with insurance, there are going to be periods where you feel very uncomfortable. Like I said, dietitians and CNSs, like, they're allergic to uncertainty. Like, in our DNA, it's like we are like the very definition of control. And what you learn, if you have not learned this already, is that sometimes you just have to throw caution to the wind. And your mindset and your personality, like I said, you have to be able to understand the concept that you will have to go through some short-term pain for long-term achievement. If you get anything from this presentation, I want you to kind of think about, when you hear me say on social media, I'm building an empire, I'm thinking in decades. I am not thinking in days. I am not even thinking in months, right? And so you have to understand that these short-term setbacks, which, will happen, like, you have to be able to see the bigger picture. And one of the most important personality traits is going to be your ability to critically think, right? Because a lot of times, if you see dietitians in the public Facebook page, you can clearly see that there was not a lot of critical thinking going on in the process, right? So you have to tap into that side. And in order to do so, you have to be really uncomfortable. And there's a good chance if you're anything like me, you're going to fail more times than you succeed. And it's going to feel scary. You guys feel like it is a learning curve, but at the end of the day, it's not about any of that, because it's okay to be scared. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. It's okay to be frustrated. But where you're really going to have your success is when you do it in spite of that. Because I don't think you'll meet anybody that ever tells you that accepting insurance is all rainbows and unicorns. But what I can tell you also about a personality is that in order for you to be successful with accepting insurance, you have to have the ability to accept responsibility. And so this means, and I say this from a place of love. I do not say this to be an asshole or a jerk, but many dietitians, when you hear them say accepting insurance sucks, that's not an insurance issue, right? There's fundamental principles, first level principles in how we bill insurance. And 99% of the time, if somebody tells you accepting insurance sucks, number one, they probably are not doing it. And number two, they're probably not doing it correctly. So I'm not saying that because I accept insurance. I'm saying that because I look at thousands of insurance claims for dietitians every single week. In like 99% of the time, it is a dietitian issue. They didn't understand the policy. They didn't verify the benefits. Yes, there will be 1% that defies gravity, but I want to be very clear that in order to be successful, it's going to be more about your mindset, more about your personality, and more about your why than you actually can imagine. So, like, if I heard this saying today, and I really like these two words, and I think it really resonates with me as an insurance-based dietitian. Dietitians who are successful in insurance-based practices are resilient and they are anti-fragile, right? Because if you do not possess the ability to rebound, you're going to have a really hard time being successful. And like I said, I just want to make sure that everybody knows what they're signing up for when they accept insurance. So like I said, I have no regrets. I would do all of these things all over again, but I just want to be as crystal clear as I possibly can that it is not always easy, but it is always worth it. And then the second piece that I really want you guys to think about is kind of what I call your peeps, right? And so does accepting insurance make sense for you and the people that you serve? So the best coverage in the world of medical nutrition therapy for CNSs and dietitians is going to be weight management and chronic disease. So chronic disease are things like hyperlipidemia, dyslipidemia, metabolic syndrome, anything that is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. Okay. So PCOS, like I said, weight loss, even those things. If those are your people, billing insurance will eventually feel like taking candy from a baby, meaning like it will be so easy that you're almost embarrassed that you do it. So that type of coverage is very easy to bill. If you're somebody who works in GI nutrition, or you're a functional dietitian, or you are a functional metabolic CNS, or you bill for eating disorders or food allergies, those things are also well covered. They just hit a different side of the patient's policy. And so that means that the patient may be responsible for a cost share. A cost share is a deductible, a copay, or co-insurance. So you want to be thinking about who you serve, and like relative to that, does that seem like it makes sense in the context of accepting insurance? And so I would say the only people that probably aren't a great fit for accepting insurance from a PEEP standpoint are people that are like super duper niche. So maybe you just work with patients with POTS, or you just work with patients with autoimmune diseases like mast cell activation. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but But something super, super, specific where you cannot bill insurance for autoimmune diseases, right? So does accepting insurance make sense for you? Like, I want you to take some time and I want you to answer these questions for yourself, right? I really want you to come to terms with, before you embark on this journey, I want it to feel like it makes sense to you. So that is super important. I love this saying, life begins the moment when you realize you don't need to prove shit to anyone. Because when I first started my journey with private practice, I came from a very traditional family where I did my internship at Yale, and my father, kind of had this vision in his head that I would be, do my internship there. And then I would be a clinical dietitian, and then I'd be a manager. And I felt like my dad kind of had this plan for me, that was not consistent with my dreams. And if you ask my dad what I did, I think he might think that I worked in the kitchen with a hairnet. And so he had this whole plan for me. And so when I decided to go into private practice, I just remember feeling like I let him down, even though the reality was I run a very successful private practice. But in my head, I always felt for most of my life that I had something to prove, or I needed to be somebody that I wasn't. And what I quickly learned, or slowly learned, that people are going to judge you no matter what. And sometimes other people's dreams are going to have to, be put aside in order for you to kind of stand forward. So if you have people in your life that are judging your decision to go into private practice, if you have mentors like mine that are shaming you because you want to accept insurance, and telling you that it is the wrong thing to do, like I said, they're going to judge you no matter what you do. And I think it's better to be liked for who you are than to be loved for who you're not. So it's super important that you guys don't dilute yourself. You don't dilute your dreams, no matter how crazy they may feel to anyone, because, like I said, you want to lean into that. And like I said, no matter what you do, I can tell you firsthand, all day, every day, people are going to judge you. So, so if you are afraid of what people think of you going into private practice, or what you think of you accepting insurance, then unfortunately, it's going to be challenging, right? But it doesn't, you need to start playing to win in your career as a dietitian or CNS. Most dietitians and CNSs, they play defense. They play not to lose. And why that's super important, and why it's critical to understand what I'm saying, is that that is very disempowering, right? To live a life that's small, to dilute yourself. So, like I said, you guys, like I said, it's not to say that I don't fear other people's judgment, but I trust myself and the decisions I make in my business more than I trust anyone else. So it's okay to suck, and you're probably going to suck in the beginning, but it's not okay to skip over your dreams just because somebody else doesn't approve of them. So it's really important, like I said, for me, like the subjective piece of going into private practice and working with insurance is really important. So let's talk about the benefits. So I've been accepting insurance since 2007. And so I like to think I know both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And the most important piece for me, so I started in eating disorders in 2007. I was classically trained in eating disorders in Division I athletes. I validated a screening tool in grad school. I worked exclusively with eating disorder patients. And one of the reasons why I decided to accept insurance before I even knew what I was doing was more for the fact that having an eating disorder was really expensive. Still is, right? And so at the time, we didn't have mental health parity laws, and we didn't have the coverage we have. And so if a patient were to go inpatient, sometimes the parents would have to pay for that, in full. We didn't have the outpatient treatment centers that we had. They were not covered by insurance. So I felt, for me at the time, if I could lessen the financial burden on the parents, on the patient, that at least I could be part of the solution. Fast forward like a decade after I stopped working with eating disorders and I transitioned to PCOS, I specialize in PCOS and women that need to lose weight in order to qualify for IVF. Also, while 10 years ago it was different, there was not as much coverage for IVF. Many of the patients, still to this day, as you guys know, they're paying out of pocket for these services. So I thought by utilizing, by becoming insurance based, I was really able to, decrease the financial load again for these patients in need and reach more people with my services. Why I use those two very different examples is those are two markets where I had a monopoly. I was the only eating disorder dietitian in Connecticut who had the specialized training that I had. I easily could have gone cash, right? You know what I mean? Because I was really the only game in town and I was fucking really good at what I did. The same thing with PCOS. I've been doing PCOS since 2008 before it was cool, hence how I have the domain name, the PCOS dietitian, right? Because the reason I just use those examples is that that was not part of my why. My why was I wanted to reach more people with my services, and I clearly could do so with accepting insurance. My practice sees about 500 patients a month, and we are almost 98% insurance based. Okay, so we are able to help an incredible amount of people with our services. The second piece, as you guys know, patients have these benefits. And they actually have had them for a really long time. And so, while after the Affordable Care Act went into play, we saw more and more coverage with these, with these plans. I would go on a limb and tell you that it's much more likely for a plan not to have coverage than it to have coverage for MNT. Yes, 100%. You need to know how to bill it, but the majority of these plans have benefits. The third part is our patients are paying top dollar for their benefits. I am self-employed and I think I pay $780 a month for me, just for me. And I think my husband is on his own self-employed plan and I think he pays close to $1,000. So two fairly healthy people paying close to $2,000 a year for health insurance, right? You want to be able to use your benefits. And so I'm sure if you're on this call, there's a good possibility that you've received a call that somebody asks, oh, I'd really love to work with you, but do you accept insurance, right? Because they want to use their benefits. And I work with an amazing GI dietitian who is very well known in the SIBO IBS space. And so she is about as good as it gets when it comes to functional nutrition. She's super plugged into media. And she literally just DM'd me yesterday. She's in my membership and she's like, oh my God. She's like, I do not know what to do. She's like, I have so many patients, that I can't even service half of them. So they want to use their benefits and she's so good at what she does. It's just like a win-win for everybody. So they want to use their benefits. And this is a piece I was talking to a dietitian on a coaching call on Saturday. And we were talking about doctors and we were talking about how it is really challenging when you are a cash-based dietitian, even if you are highly specialized, to get doctors to refer to you. And it's not because these doctors it's not all of them, support and love us, but it's just that these are so busy that if you are a cash-based dietitian, that physician is going to have to sell that patient on your services. And some of these doctors are seeing 30 to 50 patients a day. They don't even have a chance to go to the bathroom. So one of the nicest things about being insurance-based is this super easy handoff. And I would say even today alone, we probably got 8 doctor referrals for patients. So it's just easy for them to do when you're insurance-based, and you can service their patients. They have no hesitancy with referring to us. And then pay is solid, right? There's going to be wide there's going to be wide ranges in terms of insurance. I'm in Connecticut. It's a lower paying state for our Blue Cross Blue Shield product. It's the same product as California. It's the same product as Ohio, Virginia. So our Blue Cross Blue Shield product is our lowest payer. While we have some payers that pay $190, we have one payer that pays, I'm not even good. It's hard for me to even say it out loud. We have one payer that pays close to $400 for a 90-minute initial. So there is a wide disparity in terms of our payouts, but I would say as an average, I would say we typically see about $100. I'm air quoting over here because that is a very, that's a very wide range, but I was making $33 an hour. I had a research background. I had several graduate degrees behind my name. I was a CDE, and I was also board certified in renal, and I was making $33 an hour. So when I first started in insurance, we were making $75 for an initial, and I thought I was a millionaire. So to this day, I never, ever forget where I came from. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity, not only to serve you guys, but to make the type of money that we make. And so, like I said, whether it be $75 an hour, if you're in a state that pays lower, or if you're in a crazy state that pays big money, I don't care what anybody says. That is better money than you would ever see clinical. So that's super important to note. The insurance companies do some marketing for you. We talk a lot about marketing in my coaching programs. And I have a very unique perspective on it, and I have very different approaches and strategies for that. But the insurance companies, once you're in the directories, will essentially market for you because the patients will go to their insurance portal, put in your zip code, and then search for you. So we don't have any social media presence for my private practice. We do it all by local networking. And just to be very clear, this is a very important point, and I know that it gets lost in translation, and I scratch my head a lot of the time. So people will say to me all the time, I just want to be virtual only. I want to market to the world, and all of these things. I live in Connecticut. Connecticut is the size of a toenail. I live in a town called Shelton. My practice is in a town called Orange. 95% of all of our patients come within a 10-mile radius of my practice. So if one more dietitian tells me that there's no patients or there's other dietitians, in my, in my vicinity, there are 7 other dietitians in my town. 4 of them have done my coaching program, and we all crush it. Okay. So, so from a market saturated. So one more person tells me their market is saturated, or if one more person tells me Faye's stealing all of their customers, or if one more person tells me, they're super slow because of GLPs, I'm here to tell you, if your business or your practice is slow, it's not because of anybody else aside from yourself. It's because you're probably not doing something right. And so I am just over those conversations in terms of blaming everybody, because I will tell you, as a dietitian of 20 plus years in private practice, if you do not have what you want in your practice, it's because you have not done what you needed to have what you want. So, so from a marketing perspective, yes, we have to market differently, but that does not mean that, you still cannot be successful. So just to be very clear, also, from a brick and mortar standpoint, dietitians are like, oh, I want to be location independent, right? And so I'm trying to think of where we are. We're in January. In the last 4 months, where have I been? I'm in Miami. I've been in Singapore. I've been in Dubai. I've been into Boston. I've been to Mexico. I think that's all within the last 4 months. I currently see patients. I run a private practice, and I run 3 other brands. So, and I have a brick and mortar. So this concept of everybody wanting to be virtual, I get it and I understand it, but it's probably not going to serve you in the sense that it's probably going to be a disservice to you because you are marketing your services to a pretty wide net versus if like I said, think about that. We service 500 patients. We don't even have cities in Connecticut, I don't think, because I don't think we have enough, our numbers aren't big enough. So don't think that you need this big giant market like social media in order to be successful. Like I said, I don't even think we don't have a social media account for my practice. So if you don't love social media, insurance can be helpful, but I want to be super clear as well. Like you still need to market. And like, if you think your strategy for marketing your private practice is getting listed in the insurance companies, then you are going to have a very rude awakening when it comes to private practice. So yes, the insurance companies will market you on some level, but you also have to put in the work as well. Number 8, you can incorporate programs and packages, a la carte services. So there's nothing that stands in your way of operating as if you are doing the exact same things as if you were just selling cash services. In my coaching programs, I teach you how to incorporate all of those things. But if you're doing functional testing, if you are doing like I did, metabolism testing, DEXAs, VO2 max testing, if those are things that you do in your practice, meal planning, check-ins with your patients, those are not things that you have to eradicate from your business. There are ways that you can incorporate those. Yes, you have to do it legally. But those are very like the functional dietitian that I was just talking about who does GI. She does a ton of that. She almost always exclusively does that with her patients. And she has no problem incorporating that. So there is a way to do all of the things that you're doing now or that you want to do without it impacting you. Obviously, it allows you to stand out. I was laughing because when I looked at number 9, I didn't know if I should put it in quotes because I actually feel like, it's such a different world that so many dietitians now accept insurance, that I think it's actually, you're competing with insurance-based dietitians. Like if you're cash-based, it used to be the opposite, right? Like there used to be less of us and more cash-based, but it's really interesting how, obviously I love to see the market switch, but it does allow you to stand out because when people call you, you can say, yes, of course I accept your insurance. Like, when do you want to come in? And then number 10, obviously no cost share if you're billing preventative services. And I just want to throw in a caveat, if you are billing preventative services correctly, because everybody and their mother wants to bill every insurance company with Z71.3, and then they throw themselves on the ground when that doesn't work. So Z71.3 does not work for all the insurance companies. And if you use it for some of the insurance companies, there will be a cost share. So I just want to be very clear. There's no cost share if you bill it correctly. So those are you guys have heard all of the benefits. Now I want to kind of talk about the downside. So policies are obviously not universal. I have a cheat sheet that I think we've sold like close to 2,000 copies of it, but I do my best to outline the preventative benefits because they are universal for what we call group funded plans. And group funded plans are ones that are purchased by employers and there's a premium and then things are covered under that. They have to follow certain rules. If a lot of you guys are in California has a lot of group funded plans, but they also have a lot of self-funded Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, which we don't see anywhere in the US. And so, for example, we're in Connecticut, 9.9 out of all, almost 9 out of 10 Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield plans, we get Z71.3 all day, every day. If you're in a state like California, there's a chance you might have an Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, but it's self-funded and it needs to be billed a different way. So I think that's the frustrating part for dietitians. And that's why I include that as number 1. But one of the things I do Monday morning in my practice is I sit down and I go through all of the new patients that we're seeing. And I literally, all I do is I pull up their insurance card, I see why they're coming in, and I could already tell just by looking at the card why they're coming in, will the visit be covered? And so while policies are not universal, and there's hundreds of plans out there, as a whole, there's a lot of pattern recognition. And so if you work in weight management like I do, most of our patients are overweight. So almost all of our patients have unlimited visits, no matter what plan or policy we're billing, because even self-funded plans have to cover overweight, obesity, CVD stuff to some extent. So it is frustrating as a dietitian to know that policies aren't universal. But the reality is the more reps you guys put in this, the more it's going to make sense. But most of the time when you see a dietitian struggling with getting paid, it's usually they made an assumption about the policy and they build it incorrectly. So policies are not universal. That can be super frustrating, rightfully so. But I've done my best that I possibly can to kind of create a cheat sheet for you guys to show you how to do it. Obviously, you are paid your contracted rate. And like I said, the disparity in my practice, I'm just trying to think of like actual real numbers. So yeah, so like the minimum that we get on we do usually 90-minute initials. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. So that's a 6-unit initial. Our lowest payer is 150. Our highest payer is 432 for that same time period. So we're paid like 4 times as much. On a follow-up visit, our lowest payer is 75. Once again, this is a 4-unit follow-up. Our lowest payer is 75. Our highest payer is 232. Same service, same type of visit, same number of units. So there is a lot of disparity. And I like to say you take the good with the awesome. So it's like, while for a lot of you guys on this call, like you may be seeing that $75 on a 4-unit follow-up, that's still better than $33 an hour, working anywhere else. So I just, I think that's in every single state is different. So every single state has different rates. And, depending upon how long you've been with an insurance company, there is potential to negotiate. I would say nobody's going to negotiate with you unless you've probably been with them for more than 5 years and you're a pretty high volume practice and you can show to them how you save them money. So that is heavily nuanced, but yes, you cannot balance bill your patients. So say like our cash rate is $90 on a follow-up. I can't bill my patient the delta between the 90 and the 75, right? So I am subjected to my contracted rate. Another piece that's frustrating and a drawback is we are not taught this in school. And this can be pretty disempowering. This can be really frustrating because a lot of us have really expensive educations. Some of us, like me, this is like my second my second direction for my career. So we're not taught this in school. And if anything, we've been told by people we respect and value to not go into private practice and not accept insurance. So we're not only not taught this in school, I think a lot of us, including myself, we have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder because these are important tools that nobody ever taught us and everybody discouraged us to run from. So for me, that's always been a hard pill to swallow. One of the things I spend a lot of time doing, like next in April, like I fly out to Alabama and I'm going to Auburn. I spend a lot of time going to universities, DI programs, and really talking about the potential of private practice, talking about the money that we can make, because I feel like I was sold a bag of shit. And I feel like this conversation was never had. You know what I mean? And if anything, like I was told I should be grateful for making $50,000 a year, which is a crock of shit. So I'm here to rewrite the script. And I'm here to encourage you to do the same. And if you have the same anger and frustration I have, then I would encourage you to channel it in a positive way to create a fucking empire that people inspire to have. So I know a lot of us are frustrated and we have angst, rightfully so. But let's use it to channel it in a good way, to advance our field. So I know for me, this is a big one. I struggle with this a lot. Number 4, not all networks are open. This is also super frustrating. In Connecticut, I was not in with Aetna and UHC until 2020. In full transparency, I did not work very hard to get into those closed networks. So I did not really deserve to be in them. If you're like in California, as you know, Cigna is closed. If you're in certain pockets of Texas, Cigna is closed but appealable. Certain sections of Texas, Aetna is closed but appealable. If you're in Florida, you guys know Florida Blue is closed, cannot be appealed. Michigan. So we all know that there's certain networks that are not open. In Maine, not. Oh, New York, Blue Cross Blue Shield has been closed since 2020. So we don't all have the same level playing field. But rather than getting frustrated with that, you're just going to do the best you can with what you have. And so it's not about the resources you have. It's about how, it's about your, how you utilize them to your advantage. So yes, not all networks are open. I have on Reimbursement Dietitian, I have a whole blog that goes over state to state nuances. And so to the best of my knowledge, I try to keep it current. And I try to highlight what I know, what's open, what's closed. And like states like Florida, those are like a revolving door. Like one day Cigna is open, the next day it's closed. So you really have to stay on top of these things. And you have to be able to write effective appeal letters that show the insurance companies how you save them money. So yes, not all networks are open. Not all states are great. But that's, knowing that before you go into this is important. Poor communication. As somebody who likes to tout herself on being a good communicator, being swift with my responses, being clear and direct, insurance companies defy gravity when it comes to communication. Like I will probably spend all of next week filing a grievance with the insurance commissioner over certain things with Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield in Connecticut, in spite of the fact of communicating with my provider reps in Connecticut and going in circles. So, so the level of communication that insurance companies participate in is like next level bananas. Like I have never seen any other field as fucked up as the communication side. Like you will be in network with certain, like somebody in my coaching program just said, I just got a letter from Medicare today telling me that they're going to deactivate my Medicare application. I didn't even think I got in 2 years ago because I filled out the wrong application. What do you think I should do? And I was like, wow, interesting. But that's pretty common. You might have a contract with UHC. A patient finds you, you don't even have a contract in front of you. So, so the level of communication is like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just not what we're used to as dietitians and CNSs. It's just, it defies gravity. And so I like to think that being an insurance-based dietitian has changed the way that I go through life. Because I've been doing this since 2007, been audited by the IRS. I've lost both of my parents. My brother died during my internship. Like, I feel like there's no other thing that will ever derail me. And the fact that I accept insurance, I'm like numb to like the nonsense. So like poor communication to me, it's just another day in private practice. And you just do the best with what you can. And so, like I said, that part will defy gravity like you have never seen anything. But I think I said to my husband the other day, I think the roles are reversed. I think when I met my husband, I was a super anxious, typical dietitian who was a control freak. And now I look at my husband And I think we have kind of switched gears. And I think it's because I accept insurance that I like most of my days I'm putting out fires. And so when something crazy happens in my life, unless the building's burning, like I'm probably not, you're not going to get an emotion out of me. So there's poor communication with insurance. And it's like, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing this. It's just frustrating. And that's frustrating as a dietitian. We've already covered this, but there's better coverage for certain types of PEEPs. And so like, if you don't work in weight management, if you do not work in diabetes or preventative services or chronic diseases, I'm hesitant to use the word better. And I don't, oh, holy shit, I didn't even spell better right. Maybe I need to do better. But it defies like, in terms of like coverage. And so understanding, like what the score is before you go into this will temper your expectations in terms of moving forward. And then how does insurance work? So I think there's like this mystery or this like, and so I just want to kind of go through some of the basics. And I want to kind of talk about the time frame. So what you guys can expect. So depending upon your state, the credentialing and contracting process are actually two separate processes. And I think most dietitians think they're one and the same. Most dietitians will get credentialed fairly fast. It might take 45 to 60 days to go through the credentialing process where the insurance companies review all your credentials and see if you are actually legit. The contracting process then take another 45 to 90 days. And depending upon your state, it can take longer or it can go faster. In Connecticut, for our Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield product, we are generally, I'm like scratching my head. We get a contract at about month 4. That contract is generally not effective for another 3 months. If we use an example like Medicare, like I can do the Medicare application in my sleep. I can generally get a dietitian credentialed in my practice in like less than 25 days, if we have everything. So, so there's a wide kind of variability in terms of how long it takes. It's really, and people will ask me all the time, like, say I work for Faye or Nurse or Berry Street, like, will it go faster? And the answer is it really depends. It's usually about the same time because they have credentialed you under their practice. And now you are going through the same process under your practice. If anybody on here works for any of those companies, you credentialing yourself in your own private practice does not impact their ability to bill for you. So I have a ton of blogs on Reimbursement Dietitian. I have a ton of YouTube videos on this, but you can do both at the same time. And in fact, I would actually recommend you do that because there's no downside to credentialing yourself. So that process can take a while. So depending upon, I would usually say like generally no more than 6 months. I would say on average about 3 months. I know a lot of you guys are in Texas. I would say Texas is about 3 to 4 months. I would say Massachusetts about 3 to 4 months. So I would say the average out there in terms of is about 3 to 4 months. But if you're in a state like me or you're in California, like your Blue Cross Blue Shield product is going to take a while. So, and that's the most important product to start with because it's going to be your biggest payer. Okay. So if you're in any state that you can credential with your Blue Cross Blue Shield product, you always want to attack that application first because it's going to take the most amount of time. So that's like the major kind of first step, getting your contract, doing all of those things. The second piece of the basics is verification of benefits. And I think what's really interesting is that we've actually gone the opposite way in terms of accurate information. So I feel like when I first started my practice in 2007, I would be driving like from one job to another and like I'd have like a sticky on my steering wheel and I'd be calling to verify benefits. And I'd have the patient's ID number, date of birth, who was the insured, all of those things. I felt like we got more accurate information back then than we do now. So I always say verification of benefits is really important. And it's something you should do probably for the first 6 to 8 months of your practice. And whether or not you get good information, you're going to get more bad information than you get good information. And when I mean good, I mean accurate information. It's gonna teach you basically kind of like the insurance process. I die a slow death when I participate in the public Facebook page and I see all of these dietitians blaming the insurance companies like for X, Y, and Z. And when my first question is like, did you verify benefits or did the patient verify benefits? And they're like, no, I didn't. And I'm like, what did you expect? So it's like you want to make no assumptions, especially if you're billing out of state plans. We spend a lot of time in my coaching program. I actually have like a special cheat sheet for every single Blue Cross Blue Shield product in the US that dietitians add to, because we have dietitians in every single state. But for example, the way that I bill Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield in Connecticut is entirely different than the way you guys bill Highmark in PA, which is entirely different than the way you're going to bill Wellmark Blue Cross Blue Shield of Iowa. So 3 very different states, 3 very different ways of billing. With that being said, as much as that might feel like overwhelming, a lot of you guys are going to be billing the same plans over and over again. And so, for example, I stopped verifying my patients' benefits when I was calling and telling the reps like what to expect. When they would say to me, this plan has no preventative benefits, I'd say, hey, like PS, can you check X, Y? And they were like, oh, can I put you on hold? Oh, yes, that patient has unlimited visits. So that's when I started verifying. So we have all of our patients, quote unquote, verify their own benefits. But literally, like I said, I can look at their card and their plan, and I could generally tell you pretty quickly what we should expect. And if that happens, and I think it's like a self-funded plan, we will always we'll go the extra step and we'll verify just to make sure that we're all on the same playing field. So in the beginning, like you need to verify benefits. Once you're established and you understand how the plans work, you can have the patients do it, or, maybe you're more comfortable doing it. But somebody needs to do it and you need to put in the reps. It's going to be painful. Like I said, I'd spend like 60 minutes verifying a patient's benefits only for the clock to hit 5 p.m. And then all of a sudden the reps say goodbye and then, goes into the queue because they're done working for the day. So, so verification of benefits is very frustrating. There's no easy way to do it. People think that if you have ClaimMD, you can do verification of benefits with that. You can only determine if the patient actually has MNT benefits. You can't determine what is actually covered. There are rare exceptions in terms of like doing it the easy way, but every time I see a dietitian try to hack it, it tends to kind of blow up in their face. So somebody needs to do it. And it's important, especially if you're new to this, that you're doing it. And then in terms of getting paid, I would say as a whole, and I don't think we're special, but I would say certain insurances pay within 48 hours of us submitting us. The longest it usually takes will be about 35 days. If a dietitian is talking about not getting paid or it's taking forever them to get paid, there is a 99% chance that they did not submit the claim correctly. The insurance companies have a statute of limitations for each insurance, and it's usually like 30 to 35 days that they have to process a claim within a certain time frame. They either need to approve it, they either need to deny it, or they need to ask for more information, like a coordination of benefits. If it's taking longer for you to get paid, first, we want to make sure you're doing it correctly. The second piece is you have to be set up for EFTs. If you're not set up for getting paid electronically, it can take up to 2 to 3 months to get the check. And sometimes in the beginning, you cannot set up EFTs until you actually have your first check. So it can be really frustrating in terms of that. But getting paid, I often scratch my head when people say it takes a really long time to get paid. Because like I said, historically speaking, they have to pay you within a set period of time. And sometimes when I look at when it takes a long time for dietitians to get paid, it's because they resubmitted it. They submitted a claim. They realized they did it wrong. They didn't wait for the claim to get processed, and then it got processed as a duplicate. and then it got adjudicated, but they didn't know that they did something wrong. So I think in a lot of scenarios, you don't know what you don't know, but getting paid is the least of my concerns running a private practice. Like, I single-handedly could tell you, like, I worry very little. I would say on average, and I'm going to just use on average, if I look at a 90-day aging report for my practice, meaning like how many claims do we have outstanding within a 90-day period, I can confidently tell you it's 1 to 2. And a lot of times it's something like a workman's comp claim that I don't even know how to fucking bill. It's a patient got new insurance and, we have to reprocess it and we need to coordinate benefits. So a lot of times it's not our fault, but getting paid is definitely not the hard part. I think like learning how to bill, learning how to use EMRs, I think those things are more challenging than anything else. So with that being said, like, let's talk about the best practices and then we'll get into your question. So one of the things I often say, systems scale. And so the number one key to success in your private practice is having systems. And I can tell you, when I look at successful practices, whether they are conscious or unconscious, dietitians who are successful have very finite systems in terms of how they bill. They have very finite systems in terms of the criteria. How do they follow up with a claim? When do they follow up with a claim? Very systematic in terms of how they bill, how they onboard somebody, the questions they ask in onboarding, how they automate things, how they delegate things. So in my practice, one of the good things about my practice is that because I did this before I knew what I was doing and I had 5 jobs, I had no other choice but to create efficient systems. And by creating efficient systems, when I started to scale, it really allowed me to buy back more time. And so I would say I probably spend less than 2 hours a week running a practice that submits 500 claims per month. And it's all because, I sucked so much in the beginning and I needed to get better. And I realized that systems were going to be the key piece for me scaling. So you always want to invest in systems that work. You want to invest in systems that make your life easier so that for every input of time, you get more output. So I know a lot of I'll just use an example to like kind of to drive that point home. Like if you're not using an EMR and you're submitting your claims through Availity, while that may be free and it might seem really good in theory, Availity is a really confusing, innocuous system where sometimes claims go into claim purgatory and you can't find them. And then you spend hours on the phone trying to figure out where they are, only to learn it never went through. So sometimes we think we're saving ourselves money, but the reality is we're actually creating a lot more problems down the road because we have not put the systems in place. And so I am the first one to want to bootstrap things. But the reality is that there's certain systems that work and there's certain systems that, that are going to make your life much easier. So, you have to invest in yourself in order to make money. And I know that's a really hard thing to say in the beginning when you're not making money, but having systems in place are critical. The other key pieces, like we talked about at the beginning, tempering your expectations. Accepting insurance will be your new normal. It will defy gravity, but you have to commit to the process. You have to think in terms of building an empire. You have to think in terms of decades, not days. And you have to understand that quitting is not an option, because you will eat a shit ton of claims in the beginning. Like, you know what I mean? Because, somebody used a really good example on the public Facebook page today. They said it's like, they said that a patient explained, like the dietitian was having a hard time getting a claim covered. And it was because she was using a hodgepodge of ICD-10 codes that never made sense to use together. And she said that the patient described it to her like the kitchen, like firing out bad food orders and then you having to pay for them. And I actually thought that was really a good example because, most dietitians have very different expectations. You know, if I hear one more dietitian tell me that they have their patient sign a liability form, so that means that they're okay. That means that they don't need to know what they're doing. And that, like, that couldn't be further from the truth. When you bill insurance, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your clients. If you read your contracts, that's what it says. So in despite of what you put on your you know, on your intake forms and what you have people sign their lives away, the reality is, like, you are responsible for knowing how to bill. And don't get me wrong, shit will go wrong. People will give you bad cards. Like, there'll be times when it is not your fault, but 99% of the time, it is your responsibility to know how to bill. The same way, if you went in for like a ACL repair and the biller at your orthopedic didn't know what they were doing, and they billed for it, you know, and the service went towards the deductible when it should have been covered, you know what I mean? Like, you'd be pretty pissed off too. So you probably also signed a liability form assuming responsibility for that, but it doesn't make it right. And so I think as a whole, as a field, like, we need to do better, and we need to stop thinking with this scarcity mindset. We need to also take responsibility for our actions. Like, when dietitians are billing Medicare using like Z71.3, when dietitians are billing Medicare for eating disorders, like, those are things that are not covered. And they haven't been covered since 1996. So tempering your expectations, assuming responsibility, and mastering your mindset is going to be super important. And it's okay to start big and go small. Many other business coaches will tell you you have to niche down. I niched down in the beginning of my practice only because that's all I knew how to do. I only really knew eating disorders. I knew eating disorders like the back of my hand because I'd been doing them, clinically for 3 to 5 years before I actually went out on my own. So you don't have to niche down. In fact, like, you don't have to if you don't want to. In my practice, we see all types of patients aside from eating disorders. So you can go deep if it's something you want to do. But what I can tell you from my experience is you're going to learn more about who you don't want to work with than who you want to work with out of the gates. And especially like and if you are a generalist, it will allow you to kind of hone in your skills. So I don't think it's necessarily important nor necessary unless you want to. And a lot of us, when we niche down, it's because we had a particular experience, or like we have education or training in a certain area. Like, I specialize in PCOS, not because I have PCOS, because when I worked at Yale, I was given a clinic that I needed to start, and it just happened to be a PCOS clinic, which nobody was doing at the time. So I like the niches that have kind of developed in my life and my brands have not necessarily been directions that I've chosen to go. There are things that have been handed to me, and I just over time, just got better at it. So if this is something you're struggling with right now, I want you to release that shit to the universe. Obviously get yourself a mentor. So there are so many mentorship programs out there, whether it be, DPGs through the academy, masterminds, colleagues, private practice dietitians who you can pay for their time, or even pairing up. Like, I have 2 dietitians starting in my coaching program that are like best friends, and they're just going to go through it together. So getting yourself, I think what we see a lot in this space is a little bit of knowledge is super dangerous. And so, you always want to make sure that when you are seeking out a mentor or a coach, that it is someone who has what you want, right? Like, there's that saying is like, I forgot what the saying is, but it's something about shoes, right? It's like some of these people that are posturing as mentors, it's like they're not actively doing what they're saying, or they're presenting philosophy, or they're presenting, strategies and tactics, but they're not out there doing it. So if somebody's going to tell you that the way to be successful in private practice is to create a steady stream of passive income, there's a 99% chance that you're probably not there yet. And passive income usually comes towards like the middle of your career, when you've already created something that's high value. So you don't want to invent the wheel if you don't have to. And you can certainly do this on your own, but the reality is that, you know, you're going to get a lot more juice out of the lemon when you have somebody supporting you. So before we get to questions, I just wanted to give you guys a quick offer on my coaching program as coming to this webinar. One of the things I'm going to offer you guys, if you are interested in joining my coaching program, is you will get 10% off, whether you pay in full or do a payment plan, or and you'll also get an additional month of coaching. So rather than it be a 6-month program, it will be a 7-month program plus a 10% discount. But I will need your application. I'll send out a link. I'll need your application by this Sunday in order for it to qualify. So obviously my coaching program removes all the overwhelm. It's super duper structured. It's administered by the best teacher ever. And it's self-paced. So you kind of go at your own pace, but we do have a ton of live events. So we have 13 modules. We have 5 live calls per month. We have special guests. Like next week, we have an expert coming to talk about TRICARE. April, we have a dietitian talking about bariatrics. What did we just have? My husband probably doesn't know it, but he's on here. We're doing special office hours on taxes and finances. So we really do a lot in our coaching program. And it's just super, super high level. It's super, super high value, and it is 6 months long. So all I need from you guys is I will send out an email after this, and you just have to put in your application by February 16th, and you guys will get 10% off. As long as you are a good fit. So that is kind of something cool that we're offering just for you guys for coming to hang out. So final words of wisdom, I'm going to jump into all of your questions. But my final words of wisdom is that, like, private practice is challenging. Private practice is hard, but when you weigh it against the alternatives of staying in a job that you're not super psyched with, not making the money that you want to make, I think there's a bigger downside to that. So it's like, I think the biggest struggle for a lot of you guys on the call is just the fear of the uncertainty, the fear of the unknown. And just there are a lot, and trusting the process. So if you're in this stage, hopefully some of this information was helpful. I tried to make it more subjective because I feel like we don't get a lot of time to talk about that. So those are my final words. I want to jump into your guys' questions. So let me turn on my video. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go, I'm going to go through each one. And if we've already addressed it, then I will go on, but I will go through all of them. So let's go see. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so I can see. Okay. Cool. So let's go. Chicago burbs. Cool. Okay. Clinical. Sorry. Just want to make sure. Awesome. Okay, Rita says, I'm trying to get referrals from my endo, mailed business cards and brochures twice, and he said he never received them. Do you recommend dropping them off, or do you do it in person? He wants to refer me his patient. So I am not a huge fan of mailing business cards or mailing rack cards. I feel like personally, I mean, it sounds like you know this particular endo. So I would go in and drop them off, but I would say for most dietitians, the return on their investment is lowest on that. So most dietitians will send out a bunch of mailers to doctors that are in spaces that they want to work in or receive referrals from. But that's the equivalent of like cold calling people. And I don't think dietitians really realize that. So they spend a whole bunch of money on marketing material. They mass mail 20 MDs and they hear back from nobody. And then they get pissed at the MD who doesn't know them, who knows nothing about them, who has no reason to refer to them. So personally, to me, from a marketing standpoint, that is my least favorite way to kind of lead. But with that being said, if this is an endo who knows you, like I would just like walk right into the office. I would create postcards that are 4x6s. I'd lead with, the insurances that you accept. And then I'd use a QR code back to your scheduling page to make it as seamless as possible. The goal from a marketing standpoint is to decrease friction and, any way that you can make it easier and clearer to the referring physician. So in that scenario, I would be all for it, but I do very, very, very little mailing of anything. The statistic is for every 100 mailers dietitians send out, the potential return is 3 physicians. With that being said, you have to then convert those people and that you might get 1. So it is a complete volume game. And dietitians will say to me, and they'll get pissed, I went and I did a lunch and learn. I brought, all this delicious food. And now they haven't referred anybody. But the reality is, like, that is not their job. Like, if you want a fucking empire, like, you need to build it. And so you cannot rely on other people as your referral source. I would say the best return on your investment for dietitians and CNSs is to go out and talk for free, talk anywhere, talk to people at fucking Trader Joe's on your way out. Talk to anybody that wants to hear what you do and how you do it and the fact that you accept insurance. The magnitude, I don't know if my husband's still on, I'm sure he would chime in. The magnitude of free shit, we were just talking about that last night. Like, it would be the middle of February in Connecticut. He would support me. He'd come to Anytime Fitness with myself, one of the other dietitians. There'd be 3 people in the audience, all over 70, none of which have a qualifying diagnosis. Like, I couldn't even make this stuff if I tried. But we would always land 1 patient. So, so I think from a marketing standpoint, it's really, for most people, it's all about dietitians and CNSs are super smart. They need to get in front of more people. And that is super uncomfortable, especially for me. But that is where the majority of my referrals have come from, is moments when I have been super uncomfortable and I didn't want to be there. So, but if you have like a warm lead, I just drop them off. I QR code it. So then, like, you just like, it's just like printing money that they just, they'll give you that. So great question. Is the rate you're talking about the billing rate or the reimbursement rate? So I was actually talking about the reimbursement rate. So the range in Connecticut for us, I'll just use follow-ups because that's more applicable. Our lowest payer for an hour-long follow-up is 4 units. 4 units is $75. Our highest payer is $232. So very wide disparity. That's the only reason why, I use those examples, because it's the exact same service, the exact same thing we're providing, but very, very different rates. So, so our billing rate is, we bill $50 per unit, I think. No, we bill more than that because we get higher on that, but that, you know what I mean? So your billing rate has to be consistent across the board. And I think like we bill like $60 to $70 per unit, but we only get our contracted rate. So it's not like that really matters. So, but yeah, like I said, I never feel, and it's just really interesting, as one of the highest earning dietitians, I think, in our field, I never feel like I am not paid enough for the service that I provide. So even at $75, for certain situations and scenarios, I don't work in eating disorders anymore, where like there's more coordination of care, but like, I can't think of a time in my practice where like we weren't busy and we weren't making money. And like I like real money, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I'm not here to make 6 figures. Like, I'm here to make 7 or 8 figures. So like, so I don't ever feel like in the space, that, there. Kaylee asks, is the variety in payment of $90 to $400 for initial consults only? Is the average $100 per session, or follow-ups? Are these rates what a dietitian? Yeah. So those are actual rates like that we would actually get paid. So like if I were to bring up my screen in intake queue, show you all the paid claims, like you'd see the low, I'm just using follow-ups because you don't make your money on your initials, right? Like it's like a one-hit wonder, right? Like, maybe you make you essentially make royalties off your initial, and your ability to be successful in your private practice is going to be your ability to retain your client. So it's really in your follow-ups. the patients that I personally see in my practice still, I've been seeing since 2015. And I work in weight management. So that's like not a testament to like my skill set, but it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like the reality is like you make your money, you make your money on your ability to retain your clients, which means your ability to deliver value to your clients. If your clients do not see value in the service, they are not going to come back, right? So no matter how many phase, Berry Streets, GLPs, like if people see a value in the service, that's all that it is. It's an exchange of value. So if your patients do not see value, then they will not return. And also, right, some of them are just not, they're not ready to change. We all know that, right? I mean, transtheoretical. So I'm not saying that, but the majority of your money will be made in your ability to retain. So the numbers that I were giving were actual dollar amounts that like we receive. And I had some dietitian, like everybody, like there's like 2 dietitians, and I used to like show on intake queue like the actual numbers, but she was like saying that was like a violation. And I was just trying to show dietitians, like I wasn't showing you what payer paid what, but I have no problem showing like real rates, or talking about, ranges. I don't know how insurance works in Canada, but that's a good question. I just know how it works in the United States. And I just know how to bill for dietitians, and I just know how to bill for CNSs. People like, I get emails from like PTs and I don't know anything about that. And let's see, clarification. You can't bill insurance to help a patient for, no, you can't bill. Usually like there's certain, for example, like Kaylee's asking, you can't bill insurance to help a patient for an autoimmune disease. Usually when you're working with somebody with an autoimmune disease, you are treating the symptoms, or, like you're providing an intervention to help them manage the autoimmune disease. So say, for example, when I worked at Yale in the very beginning of my career, I covered radiation. And so, for example, like say in the head and neck, right, we had a patient that had, status glossectomy, like they didn't have their tongue, they had diabetes, like we're managing dysphagia, we're managing phosphate levels. So we're actually managing, like in that particular scenario, like, something different aside from the disorder. So most autoimmune diseases, when you bill as a dietitian or CNS, are outside of the scope. So I wouldn't be billing in that scenario for tongue cancer. I would be billing for dysphagia. I would be billing for hyponatremia, right? So like I would be billing for the conditions that we help mitigate. I don't want to use the word treat because I know that that's not what we do, but I don't know of most, I don't think you can bill for most autoimmune diseases, because I think they're like, it's like cancer, right? We treat like, you know what I mean? I think at Yale, we have something like 48, oncology dietitians, but we're never billing, for oncology by itself. We're managed, but that's a good question. So, so if you had a patient who had autoimmune disease, but they were also obese, right? So patient presents today for Hashimoto's, like in the setting of weight management. You know what I mean? So you can still treat the autoimmune, the same way if you were to bill for Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, patient presents today for dietary surveillance in the setting of PCOS. Like I'm not going to bill for PCOS because I know that's going to trigger the deductible or the copay, but I'm still going to be very clear with the insurance company exactly what I am billing for. So that was a really good question. Looking beyond the contracted rate, will you be willing to speak a bit about your experience navigating the time you put into your business that isn't paid time, and what you've observed with your program participants as they work towards getting efficient with billing for their services? So yeah, I think that's a good question. And my husband always asks me, like one of the things that would be helpful to have like my coaching clients, like quantify how long it took them to get to full-time in terms of capacity and numbers. I can speak loosely. I would say most of the dietitians in my coaching program, it's a 6-month program. I would say probably a month between, depending upon their marketing skills and their counseling skills, I would say most of them are probably at their capacity by 8 to 12 months. You know what I mean? So so I look at the cost of, the way that I look at, like, say, even like pricing my program is the average dietitian makes $50,000 in the United States, plus or minus, right? Let's say 55. Say you invest in a coaching program like mine, I can probably double and triple your income easily within a 2-year period. So something like the return on your investment. And so I would say in the beginning, you're going to spend probably 5 times as much time, because in the beginning, you're going to be putting in your systems in place. You're going to be setting up your templates. But if I showed you how to submit a claim, which I can't do because of FI, submitting a claim actually takes like less than 10 seconds. You know what I mean? And so I would say setting up your systems. And I think it's really going to depend too on, like, are you inventing the wheel? Right. So like, when I first started my practice, I remember like my first patient schedule, like I had no forms, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, it's like, I'm up in the middle of the night, like creating like consent forms and stuff like that. So I think it's a matter of like how much you have done. And then I would say, as they work towards getting more efficient, I think like, it's just, even though I don't have kids, like every day of my life as a RD coach is like, it's just like a proud moment, because it's like, I feel like in the world of private practice, what I have seen and observed, like I work with, like I said, thousands of dietitians each year. The dietitians who hustle and grind it out and put in the work, like there is a return on your investment. And so like, I remember when I worked at Yale, like I always just thought, like I didn't ask enough questions, but like I remember like working overtime. I was 24 hours with full-time benefits. And I just thought that like if I worked overtime because I have extra work, like I would get paid more. And I started looking at my checks and I was like, she's like, no, you're salaried. And so like if you have to work more, like that's on you. And like that was like probably my first wake-up call that like I would never work in a situation where somebody controlled my income. And so like I think in this scenario, I think like in terms of getting efficient, I think it's the dietitians that aren't afraid to make mistakes and just go all in with it. So like I think as a dietitian, I can speak to myself, like the more cautious you are, like I played a lot of sports growing up, and I remember I used to be a really like I was a gymnast. And one of the things I realized very quickly is that like the more fearful you were of doing something, the more likely you are to get hurt. And so it's like you almost have to act more offensively. It's like driving, right? You never want to be on the defense. And so I find that dietitians who who play offense and go all in, like I feel like the process, like I'm like cry, like thinking about all the dietitians in my coaching program, like how well they're doing now. Yeah. So I think in terms of like how long it takes to navigate versus the paid time. Like I don't know. See, it's like I don't ever think about like the paid versus the non-paid time, because I like the reality is like if you want to build epic shit, it's going to be hard and it's going to take more time. So, and the reality is like, it's like everything takes more time than you think it will. So I don't know. I've never even thought about like the unpaid time that I work. I'm very good with numbers and I understand that essentially that works out to you. But I think in the beginning, you have to be willing. And I don't think most dietitians are willing to do this. Like you have to be willing to have a life that's out of balance. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and like when dietitians come into work in my practice, and they're like, they tell me like they want work-life balance, like there's a good chance in the beginning of your practice, like that won't exist. So I think you have to kind of understand that piece, which is, I think that's a critical piece, of course. That's a really good question. Once you are in network with the insurance company, are you safeguarded as being in network with them, even if they close? I don't know what that means. I've never worked with an insurance company that has closed. Oh, you mean like maybe closed network? Yeah, I've never, yeah, so you're generally protected once you're in. Certain insurance companies will like, I think like UHC, like you re-up your contract like every 3 years maybe. And that's like more simple stuff like correcting your CAQH and stuff like that. But it's not hard stuff. Like they don't make you like dance to like stay in. But yeah, I found that, like I said, that's the easy part. Rita says, I've been trying to get in network with Humana and UHC for 5 months and still nothing. It's so frustrating. I called, emails unresponsive. What do I do? So Humana is only a Medicare product. So like if you're going to bill Medicare, then that's fine. But Humana no longer covers commercial plans. And they're one of the lowest payers, I think, in the United States. So they wouldn't, so unless you have a huge amount, Humana used to be, they also used to insure the military, kind of like similar to TRICARE. Like they used to be like the one that managed the plan. UHC, like, so if somebody says that they've called and they've emailed, to me, like I'm just going to speak from the heart. Like that's not putting in the work. Putting in the work is calling, stalking, finding the person where your letter needs to go. So what did I do to UHC? Like I stalked, emailed, called until I could find the person where my letter needed to go. When they sent me the actual physical address where the letter needed to go, I'm not even making this up. They sent it like in an encrypted email that I needed to set like a passcode, like that, it was so crazy, but I did it. And so I sent a certified letter to UHC every single month, signature required, for 15 months, every single month. And every single month I would edit my letter and I would update it to include, I would be very clear, like, how does my practice save UHC money, right? Like we work in diabetes management. What is the cost of having diabetes? So most dietitians will send a letter or not send a letter, or they'll call or their email. Like that's kind of the equivalent of like sending mailers I'm just speaking from my heart, but like, I like, it's like, if I want something, like I'm going to go until I get what I want. And the reality is like, it's not going to be fun, but once a month, like every single month in my planner, I would go down to the post office, send it. I could tell you it cost me $6.87 until I got in. So that's what I did. And I just made sure that my letter was really convincing. Most dietitians send appeal letters, and the appeal letters are all about how awesome they are, right? Like, you know what I mean? And the reality is like the insurance companies don't care about that. They want to know how you save them money. And so like I would send them like a 5-page letter, all with references. We work in the space, we have CDEs, like this is how we save you money. It's similar to like, the Academy published something in Ventures, actually pretty similar to explaining like my process for that, but to kind of show like how we save them money. But that's kind of what I do there. Like, you know what I mean? So like I go like all in. If I want something, like I will not stop until I get it. Like I will become obsessive compulsive because there's no reason to be excluded. The only reason to be excluded is because I have not put in the work to do it. So, and I can tell you that UHC is a great payer for us, and I am super grateful. And the same thing with Aetna. We did the same thing for Aetna, and Aetna is one of my biggest payers. So, and when everybody was crying about Aetna a couple of years ago, we went in and we renegotiated our rates, and now we get paid stupid. So I think a lot of times when people are complaining and everybody is crying, it's like, that's when you're going to go in hard. So Shelly says, I have an NPI2 and Aetna told me a group is, yeah, so that's true. Yeah, so you cannot, you would just credential under your type 1. So you cannot credential with UHC or Aetna with your type 2. If you are an LLC, Blue Cross Blue Shield will require a type 2 and Cigna will require a type 2. So that's totally, unfortunately, normal. So you just call and you credential, under your type 1. So certain insurance companies, interesting. I've heard many insurance companies in California. Nope. So there's like a rhyme and a reason. So like I said, UHC, Aetna, type 1. Blue Cross Blue Shield, if you are an LLC, type 2 or an S Corp. Medicare, you can do type 1. And then who are we missing? Cigna, always type 2. So they're like, so a lot of times we'll talk about, like, you'll hear people say like statewide stuff, but the reality is like, it's the same rules across the board. So the only reason like you'll hear me ask a question like what state Blue Cross Blue Shield product, but UHC behaves the exact same way as it does in California, as it does in Texas, as it does in Connecticut relative to fully funded plans. So, so just to be clear about that, like, you know, like the shit makes sense. Just says, I was accepted to Aetna and Highmark. What are the next steps to begin working with billing with these companies? So, yeah, so first things first, you have to get patients. And then you probably have to decide on like how you want to bill. Aetna, you can bill through Availity for free. And then Highmark, you can go through Blue P or whatever it is. But first step there is really just to determine, really to determine how, what billing platform you're going to use, and then educating yourself on that. So making sure that so probably diving in deep with Aetna, understanding how you're going to get the visits with Aetna, and then, finding the policies for Highmark. So you never want to see a patient unless you feel like comfortable navigating their insurance. So first steps really are getting some patients. Second probably part is, understanding, what platform you're going to go through to like utilize that. But yeah, that's, I always say, like, people will say to me, like, I'm already credentialed with, X, Y, and Z. I don't need your coaching program. I'm like, dude, like I give away my whole first module for free. Like, where most people need help is how to set up systems and billing. Like I give away, like, I could probably give away like in 5 different spots how to, but yeah, the billing part and navigating that part, unfortunately, like that's the part I think where people need the most support with. And it's frustrating. I totally get it. Makes sense. Verify benefits. Do you have an estimated of time you spend verifying benefits in the beginning? Is this hours of time on a week? Yeah, so good question. So when I first started my practice, let's just say when I was like full time, when I didn't know any better, and I say this like because I was really truly naive. I used to see 40 to 46 patients a week in my practice because I thought that that's what a full-time. I thought like you worked 40 hours and then that was just a little OT. So, so I didn't. And what happens with a lot of the plans is that you'll start to see the same plan. Like, so say like state of Connecticut all have Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. And so I was really fortunate. Like I would have one patient, say Yale New Haven, like I work with like all of the labor and delivery nurses. You know what I mean? So I knew they all had Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield. I knew they all had Anthem. So I think dietitians with the verification process, they psych themselves out and they say, oh my God, all of these plans are really so different. But I think the reality is like all of them are so similar. So I would probably say that I spent probably like less than 2 hours verifying, but like most of the time it was like, it was like driving literally all around the state of Connecticut while doing it. But after a while, like I said, like I can tell you, like you throw out a plan, it's like going to the carnival and like, like guessing somebody's birthday. Like you give me an insurance card, like I can tell you exactly how to bill it if you tell me what they're seeing them for. So like it's such pattern recognition. I'm not like a superstar. It's just it will become the same for you. It just feels like very uncertain in the beginning, but after a while you'll stop verifying because you'll be like, oh, like I knew that because like I've seen that plan before. So you suggesting prior meeting with the patient, should they call to verify? No, you should definitely not have your patients call to verify their own insurance if you do not know how to do it. Like I kind of put that in the category of like dietitians making we all have them sign a financial liability form, but I put that in the same bucket as the same dietitians who go into the Facebook pages and say and flex and they're like, yeah, but I have my patient sign like X, Y, and Z, and then they'll say I don't verify their benefits because like I don't have to, and then that same dietitian like the following week will like be in there like crying about 10 claims that got denied. So the basics of insurance verification, if you go to amyplano.com and you click on the insurance tab, I pretty much have verification of benefits in terms of like the questions to ask and how they're outlined. Like, like the reality like is that there are so like, there's like very few things that there's like, I pretty much give you everything you need, like, among a lot of the resources. Like, I'm not one of these people that's like, Well, maybe it's there. So if you go to amyplano.com, click on the tab for insurance, you'll see. So we talked about that. Brooke asked, what would be the best questions for verifying? Yeah, so I have it all on my website. It's amyplano.com. Go under the tab for insurance. And I have obviously it's a patient facing a patient. That's my website for my private practice, but you'll see I have all the questions listed in the order, that they need to be asked. So I always just tell people you can just bootleg my script. That's fine. Kinga says, I think you touched on this, just wanted to clarify. If you work for a company like Nourish, can I still build? Absolutely. So people ask me all the time. I probably on any given day, I probably get 10 to 20 emails from random dietitians and CNSs asking for my thoughts on Nourish, Faye, Berry Street. And in all sincerity, I don't have any, I don't really think about these companies aside from the fact that I know all that goes on. And the way that I look at them for you guys in your practice, and I say this sincerely, money is money. So it's if you're getting paid and you're building your practice and somebody's doing the hard lifting for you and you're okay with that, then that's fine. You know what I mean? I would say, I think 80% of the dietitians in my coaching group, 60, I don't know the numbers, but I probably say 75 to 80% of the dietitians in my coaching program work for one of those companies right now. And when they tell me on a discovery call, they tell me it's something shameful. I'm going to judge it. You got to make money, you know what I mean? And it doesn't matter where the money comes from, as long as you're comfortable in the situation. If you feel you're mistreated, I know all of the things. I know way too much information about all of those companies. But it doesn't make me judge them any more, any less, because I'm in no position to judge them. So you can totally work for all of them, including Nourish, which is a W-2, and still build your own practice. So historically, if you work for an employer, they'll have a disclaimer, you can't work for somebody else. But even in my practice, the girls, some of the girls have their own practices, but at the end of the, I don't feel at all threatened by them, because the reality is they are very well fed. You know what I mean? So it just depends on what works for you, but I don't think it's got to work for you. And I think money is money, you know what I mean? So it's if you're in the beginning and somebody's going to offer you $50 an hour, versus 26, working in a hospital, and that it's short term, and that you're going to learn from that opportunity, I think it's not a bad opportunity. So I just remember, I stay out of those conversations in the public forum, because they're just it's not my business to judge somebody else's business, so I would clarify, if you would be under their tax ID. Nope. So you wouldn't. So you're under their tax ID. And when you credential under your practice, you're under your own tax ID. So so say you change your tax ID, which is not something I recommend, you have to re-credential from the beginning. So if you start off as a sole proprietor and you then move to an LLC and you're not able to carry over your EIN, you will start all the way from the beginning with the credentialing process, because you're introducing a new business. And the reason why I know is I did that twice and I didn't get paid for 7 months. So you, as soon as you change your EIN, intentional or not, the second time the IRS forced a new one for my S Corp, then you have to re-credential from the beginning. So that's why there's totally separate entities. And so you are your private practice over here, and then they are over there. And so they're looking at you as a whole separate, new identity there. So no problem there. Would you encourage dietitians to, yep. So I didn't even see that one coming. And I think I already, yeah. So I don't see the downside to that. You know what I mean? It's there's you're I always the way that I kind of assess my life is there's earning seasons and there's learning seasons. And the beginning of your private practice, probably for the first 5 years, you're learning. And so if somebody's going to pay you to learn, and then you're going to be able to side hustle on the side, you're going to be able to start to build that thing on your side. That's incredible. And it's it's hard for me to even digest some of the conversations I see in the Facebook page about some of these companies just from a dollar standpoint, because, it's like at the end of the day, it's like, it's fairly decent money, for a lot of dietitians who are brand new to this space. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not a bad gig. So, yeah, obviously there's downsides, but I don't see the downside if your goal is to build your own private practice. Because I think one of the things we don't do a good job as business coaches is we put working for yourself in private practice on this pedestal, and we make it seem like the end be all of life is that I run a private practice and I work for myself and I do all of these things. But the reality was, if somebody was going to pay me $1 million+, and I could go work for them, I would happily do that, because being the boss of my business, of my brands, is my least favorite job. But nobody's going to pay me the type of money that I make. But I would go work at Target. Like, I would go do whatever I needed to do. But it's like, I don't mind working. Like, I don't have any shame. Like, if I were to list all the jobs, if I were to tell you some of the things I did at the beginning of my career, like, you guys would die. But it's like, I don't like, I needed money. So it's like, you know what I mean? So I cast very little shame on anybody, like I said, I don't judge them. Yeah. So Elena, definitely my coaching program is only geared towards, I just had a major issue with a Canadian dietitian. So yes, only 100% US based dietitians practicing in the US. Jamie asked a question. Right now I have a sole proprietorship, but I'm told I should incorporate as an LLC before I start credentialing with insurances. Yep. So that was my thought. So I cannot comment on the legal or the tax implications of starting your practice, but what I can tell you from my experience is you do not want to change business entities. I started as a sole proprietor, went straight to an S Corp, and then had to change my EIN twice in the process. And when I tell you it was a disaster, like I couldn't even make it up if I tried. So, yep. So you do not want to switch entities at all. The cheat sheet you mentioned, is it the one I have, or there are others? So I have one main cheat sheet for billing the major insurance companies. And then I probably have like sub cheat sheets on other things, but not all of them are for sale. So for example, like we have one inside the program that is a cheat sheet for how to bill each state. And then each Blue Cross Blue Shield product, but that's not one, it is for sale. So the cheat sheet is the new one. I just sent it out, I think a couple of weeks ago, and I updated it with all like the new ICD-10 codes. So like the new obesity ones, the PEDS codes. I put any of the new info on it. So that would be the cheat sheet. Do you talk about testing or functional dietitians and how to get that or get trained in it? Nope. So, yeah. So I don't teach dietitians how to do any of the functional testing. I can teach you guys I can teach people about metabolism testing and stuff that's within my scope, but I don't do any functional testing. But I can always recommend like dietitians that are, amazing dietitians that are teaching that out in the space. So yeah, so DIFM is so I actually did a really good, webinar for DIFM like last year. So like, I always try to do as much stuff as I possibly can, but we have so many functional dietitians in our coaching program that DIFM is amazing. Ashley Koff is amazing. So I do a ton of work with them, trying to create, just trying to like decrease the barriers that functional dietitians see to using insurance. So we spend a lot of time in my course, like teaching you guys like step by step, how to incorporate those things. If it's something that you want to do, so just something to keep in mind. Irene says, I just created my LLC and applied my first insurance company. I'm an RD. My BLC and my practice will specialize in perinatal nutrition, lactation consults, what potential is covered by insurance. So I don't know anything about lactation consultants. I don't know how to bill for that. But Massachusetts is we have like, it's like awesome. It's like, we have so many good dietitians. I spoke at the Massachusetts meeting last March on reimbursement. And you guys have a really incredible bunch of dietitians in Massachusetts, but Massachusetts is one of like the most straightforward, like easy states to bill. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mass like provides unlimited visits. You guys do not have telehealth parity, so not all telehealth visits are protected, but it's a good state to practice. It's like middle of the road in terms of reimbursement. It's like super easy to bill. Yeah. So like as a whole, like I just go all in with Massachusetts if I could. Sarah asked, does your program talk about marketing? Absolutely. So we go super deep into marketing. During office hours, like if you want, I'll look at your website. You can walk me through your funnels. You can show me like if you're doing, so we spend a lot of time. I don't know how to say this. Like if you show me your marketing stuff, like you have to be ready to like receive the information. Marketing is it's a very important integrity driven piece of my business. And I spend a lot of time, effort, and bandwidth, like thinking about how to do it right. And if I'm not working with you guys, I'm usually studying how to be a better marketer. So we spend a lot of time in the course going pretty deep on marketing, marketing psychology, persuasion. And I think if I could give you guys any words of wisdom from a marketing perspective, is that I only follow on Instagram. I only follow dietitians, like high fashion, like influence, like clothes stuff, and then travel. And what I can tell you from watching dietitians all day, every day on marketing is I think most dietitians think about marketing kind of like advertising is telling kind of people what you do. Marketing is really showing them how your products and services are a solution, to their biggest pain points. And for example, like I see dietitians say post on like they'll do like a whole thing on like the vitamin D content of like X, Y, and Z. And it's like nobody really cares about cod liver oil. Like nobody's gonna like, you know what I mean? So I think what you want to ask yourself from a marketing perspective is like, what things or problems can I solve at the highest level I possibly can for free to deliver as much value as humanly possible. Like I see very few dietitians and business coaches genuinely out there with the intention to serve first, sell second, right? And so if you lead with like, say you had all of the money in the world and you never needed to work again, like showing up from a marketing standpoint, like to serve the people you want in your practice, like at the highest level. So many dietitians will say to me, like, I don't want to give away my secrets. Like, I don't want to give away too much. Like, you can never give away too much free shit because the reality is like where we all make our money, whether it be a business coach, whether it be a dietitian, is in the implementation. Most people don't need more information, right? You could fucking chat GPT, like, everything and anything. The reality is people need help with implementation. And from a marketing standpoint, you guys need to stretch the gap between where your clients are and how your insurance-based services are a solution to their biggest pain points, and show up every day, no matter what you do, consistently. Not even every day, but show up consistently. And I think most dietitians don't do any of those. So yes, I am super, like marketing has such an important like part in my heart. Because I spend so much time like watching, I don't want to say dietitians do it badly. Like they're working hard, but they're working hard on the wrong things. So yeah, we do spend a lot of time. If you want to show me your website, like I will walk you through exactly what I think you need to fix and why. And you know what I mean? So yeah, so you know what I mean? Because it would be, I think people think they join my program and we just do reimbursement. And it's so funny because like we do money, we do taxes, we do bariatrics, I don't think you can, I think it's unfair as a business coach to not teach all of those important aspects, because the reality is like, no matter like what somebody's teaching you, like you need to have people in your practice, which means you need to know how to market. So like, I think that marketing is like the most, it's the hardest thing for us as dietitians to do. And I think we make it harder. So super important. And we go pretty deep into doing that. What if there are no private practitioners doing pediatrics in your city? How do you go about finding a mentor? So I think the best way to go about finding a mentor is to find somebody doing exactly what you want to be doing and then show up and see how you can help them. You know what I mean? Like, how can you add value into their life, right? Because like, I cannot tell you the amount of emails, DMs I get. Everybody wants something from me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, nobody wants to really genuinely like help me. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think people have to understand that there has to be a value exchange. And so sometimes even having somebody do something for free for you, like, isn't worth your time. So I think you have to, it's like a relationship, like you have to nurture it and you have to keep on trying. And, but there's tons of amazing, I can like think of like 100 amazing pediatric dietitians just off the top of my head. It's like pediatric dietitians are such a special breed, and every single one I know is like an incredible fucking human. And I like bow down to them because I am horrible at peds. But yeah, I would seek out people who have the life and business you want, and do whatever you can do to like be in their circle, you know, whatever that looks like. Shelly says, I have a patient with Blue Cross Blue Shield that's part of an employer self-funded plan. The state rep said they could tell me the plan. DM, yes. Or obesity, would you bill with an E-code? Okay, yeah, so self-funded plans don't have to follow standard rules. So that means that, so a standard Blue Cross Blue Shield self-funded plan will almost never cover Z71.3. The reality is self-funded plans do have to adhere to the Affordable Care Act guidelines. So they have to cover, unless it's excluded specifically, overweight, obesity, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, all of those things. And so like a third party administrator, a TPA is just the person, it's just the product that manages it. So remember too, I want to just be very clear. It's not the Blue Cross Blue Shield's rep to tell you the CPT code and diagnosis code to bill, unfortunately. Somebody said in one of the Facebook pages, like they called Blue Cross Blue Shield and like asked them how to bill, and like they were pissed that they didn't tell them how to do it. Like that's not how it works. So the reality is like you need to know the plan and you need to know the questions to ask. And so in these scenarios, historically speaking, they have to cover Affordable Care Act stuff unless they specifically exclude it. So whenever I bill for obesity on these plans, I always bill with an E-code. So I always get documentation. Because like if you saw in the public Facebook page today, people always give me balls with Aetna and they say, why do you get an E-code? And this dietitian said, like clockwork. She said, oh, they denied the, you know, the 11th visit. And I was like, wouldn't you believe that? So you know what I mean? So it's like, you always want to like run the hills in the beginning. And so that may mean getting documentation. That may mean getting referrals or whatever you need to effectively bill that. But I would bill that. I'd get an E-code and I just let the E-code rip. And in it, unless they formally exclude obesity as a rider on the self-funded plan, they usually have to cover that. Cool. So Ellie says, I have 20 years of experience in hospital dialysis, just a bit one-on-one. I want to start my own practice. I have no experience like that, despite my vast knowledge. Where do I start? So I just had this I just had this incredible dietitian join my coaching program. Her name is Suzanne, and she is in Massachusetts. And so she's been a dietitian for 25 years, and she reached out to me like, let's say like 8 months ago, and she kind of had the same scenario. So she's been working in pharma. So she hasn't been working in clinical. And so I actually wouldn't accept her into my program because I felt like she needed some clinical reps, you know what I mean? And so I said, like, I'm going to do you a disservice. I can teach you how to run a successful business and build a private practice. But you need the reps counseling, because if you're not a good counselor, we can't retain your patient. So what she did was, in that meantime, she went and she worked with two, like she mentored and she volunteered, and she's like in her 60s. She's like almost ready to retire. She found as much like free stuff that she could mentor. And then she went and hired a dietitian coach who actually, who teaches like counseling skills. And then she came back last month, and she said, hey, Aim, like I did all the things you asked me, like, can I join? And I literally had a call with her on Saturday, and she's already has 2 patients and she's like ready to go. So it was like so bittersweet when you like help people slow down to speed up because you want them to be successful. But the education piece is like really important. So I think it's hard, right? It's like, it goes back to like before we got our internship, right? We needed experience in order to get an internship. So I think anybody that you can shadow or anybody that will like take you under their wing, you know, they'll be happy to help, you know what I mean? So, but what I can tell you from my experience too, is that probably once a day, I get an email from somebody looking to shadow. In as a private practice business owner and clinician, it's also hard to field all of those, because the reality is that not everybody really not everybody, most of the people that I brought into my practice who are to shadow have created a lot more work, you know, than is always good. So you have to, you know, so as dietitians, we have to filter who we're able to bring into that. So, so I'm sure you're going to get a lot of no's, more no's than you get yeses. Nikisha asks, I have 5 nephrologists in one practice that are willing to refer CKD diabetes, and they're trying to check with their billing company to see how the payment works. I haven't started anything from my own practice. Do you think it's better to establish an LLC? Oh, yeah, absolutely. So like there's a fallacy, like there's this massive fallacy that could be a whole nother line of my business, but I choose not to work with physicians and I want to work with you guys, is that if a physician tells you that they are going to hire you and they're going to do the billing, the credentialing part, they probably can just like, you know, muster through. But if they tell you that they're going to bill for your services and like you're depending on them being able to bill for your services, like I would run as far as you possibly can. So what I would do in that scenario is I would do all of the things on your own, and then I would create an agreement with them where like you pay them rent. You do not pay them a percentage, right? Because that's fee splitting and that's illegal. But you're much better off in that scenario because you're not any better off with them billing for you. There's like this, you know, we all want somebody to do it for us. And like somebody just posted in the public credentialing Facebook page, right? Like she paid somebody $4,000 or $5,000 to do all of these things, and it ended up costing her twice as much of that to fix the mistakes. And so like this concept of somebody, if it sounds too good to be true, like it probably, you know, is related. Oh, Julie asked about my shirt. My shirt's from Shein. I'm embarrassed to say this, you know, but it's Shein. It looks a lot more, it looks a lot more expensive than it is. It was probably like $20, but Shein in China, in full transparency. Samantha asks, how do you know your insurance contracted rate? Do you put your contracted rate on health insurance claims form? So your insurance contracted rate is the rate the insurance companies provide you in your contract. And so after you sign your contract, they will usually give you access to it. What you put on the health insurance claim is your usual and customary rates. Those are the rates that you determine that you will bill all insurances the same rate. So what goes on the claim is your usual and customary rates, while what you're paid is your contracted rate. Let's talk more on how you keep clients. Okay, yeah, good question. Yeah, I could do a webinar on retention. We do have that. We 2 dietitians did that for my coaching program. But that is really where you guys will make the money. It's not in your single sessions. Suzanne asked, what billing program do you use? We use IntakeQ, and then we integrate it with Office Ally. But I've used them all. Like we teach how to bill on all of the EMRs in my program. So like whatever one you choose and you like. One of the things we do go in detail in the coaching program is like, here's healthy, this is why it's good, this is why it's bad, this is what it costs, this is what it costs when you scale with it. So I can teach you how to bill on any of them, but we use IntakeQ, and we use Office Ally. Okay, cool. Heather asks, your thoughts on intuitive eating and accepting insurance. Hear you saying cost sharing with eating disorders, and I'm very interested in helping somebody with chronic dieting. Yeah, so we have a ton of dietitians. So Michelle Phillips is one of the dietitians in my coaching program, in my membership, and she does a ton of work with intuitive eating. Sam Cartina used to, so a lot of the big space, it's actually really fascinating. A lot of the cash-based intuitive eating dietitians, all of a sudden seem to be accepting insurance. Not a bad thing, but all of these dietitians that were super anti-insurance, now everybody on their team accepts insurance. So intuitive eating, I always tell people, like, if you come into my coaching program, like, I am not, like, that is not my philosophy. But it doesn't mean that I can't teach you how to bill for it. It just means like we use words like obesity. Like I personally believe like women with PCOS benefit tremendously from weight loss. So I always tell people, depending upon the space and place where you come from, like we use those words. And if you want to bill for certain things, you will have to use those words as well. And so it may require you to ask of their weight or get a self-reported weight or put in your document. So yeah, so I'm, we have, I would say the majority, I'd say like, I'm just trying, yeah, it's like, it's weird. Like a lot of the dietitians, I would say like more dietitians in my coaching program do intuitive eating than not. And they do it very successfully, but it's just not something that I've personally ever done, but I can teach you how to do it. But I always just tell people like, I'm a weight loss dietitian. And I always want to be very clear with that. I don't care what you do, but I don't change my terminology, you know what I mean, in terms of the words that I use. I write the word obesity out. I don't use an asterisk. So I always just tell people like that's the space where I'm coming from. And so say you don't want to use that word, but you want to bill for it, you have to decide ethically like what that feels like for you. But yes, we have tons of dietitians like doing really amazing work in that space, successfully billing. When billing weight management or dietary surveillance in relation to disease state that generally, yeah. So I only put, you always want to go path of least resistance with your coding. So like, as soon as you start to put more than one code on, there's a good chance it's going to deny. So if you put a Z71.3, and I'll just use the example of the dietitian, the Facebook page, and then she goes and puts reflux also on the claim, it's going to go towards the medical. So you're always going to use the code that seems to work best. And then you're going to document everything that you provided. So you're never doing, so patient presents today for dietary surveillance in the setting of weight management for PCOS. So you're not using PCOS on the claim, because if you use PCOS on the claim, it's going to go towards the deductible or the cost share. You're going to provide amazing interventions, service, kindness, compassion, all of those things for that PCOS patient. And you're going to be very clear that you use that specific code. But you just want to make sure that I always say like, you don't want to mix your alcohol. Like dietitians like love to use a good Z code, and they have anxiety when they don't use it. So a lot of times the Z71.3 might be vodka and the PCOS code might be beer, and they always do it at the same time. So they're like shotgunning beers and doing shots of vodka, and they're wondering why they're sick in the morning. And the reality is that they mix their alcohol. Maybe I'm dating myself. Maybe people don't say that, but like, you know what I mean? Like there always be somebody say like, don't switch up your alcohol. Yes, cool. My husband says to remind you guys, there's seasons for earning and there's seasons for learning. And they're two very different, like they're often very different. We always feel like we want to be in an earning season, but the reality is in order to earn, you need to learn. So he wanted me to remind you guys about that, which I think I did, but Rachel asks, in terms of sport nutrition, are there circumstances you'd be able to bill for insurance? Yep. Yeah. So like I did a ton, like my second transition after eating disorders in athletes was athletes. So I was a Division I athlete. I played soccer and lacrosse. And so for me, sport nutrition is like a big aspect of my life. I was an ice hockey goalie. So all of the things. And so a large portion of my practice, we worked with athletes. And we would, especially for Blue Cross Blue Shield, we build, like used to do all the games athletes for CrossFit, ton of work with all the local firefighters, New Haven Police Department. So depending upon the insurance, right? If you know the insurance, especially like in some of these situations, and you're documenting what you're providing, patient presents for dietary, surveillance, like in the setting of sports performance for X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? You always just want to make sure that you are documenting and stating kind of what happens. But yeah, my second transition after I smashed eating disorders was sport nutrition. And we did a ton of it. How do you bill with regards to gut health and skin health? Asking the wrong wrong dietitian, so you probably don't. Gut health, you would be billing for, the symptoms and the symptomology, you know what I mean? Whether, but I'm not super, like, you wouldn't bill for eczema, right? Because we're not a dermatologist. Like the same way that like most PCPs probably couldn't bill for certain codes, like those codes would be under a specialist. So you would bill for gut health, kind of the same way that you would kind of probably, bill for the things that you're treating. So if somebody came in and patient presents for, weight management in the setting of SIBO, you know what I mean? Or, you know what I mean? You always want to be very clear that the context that you're providing it in. Cool. Okay. See Medicare. Oh, somebody asked, are you starting a business where you credential and take care of billing, or interested in it for a group practice? Yeah, we are, you know what I mean? Like it's all done and it's just ready to go. It's just, yeah, I'm just struggling with, yeah, I'm just struggling. Like I don't want to let anybody down. And so it's like a big responsibility to do it. So we have all the infrastructure, like we're ready to go. We're ready to rip. We have the team to do it. I'm just not sure. Like I know I would do it 100% and I would give it an A+ effort. But it's so nuanced and I just would not want to let anybody down. So that's like the main reason. Like nobody's doing it well. And I know we could knock it out of the park and we could like do your billing in our sleep. Yeah, I just like I have this uncertain, I don't like to disappoint people, and I certainly don't like to disappoint dietitians, but we have everything's built out and ready to go for that. So I'm just trying to figure out the next steps with that. Do you know the highest payer in California? Probably UHC, I would say. Lowest payer is obviously Anthem. Rita asks. Okay, so Rita's gonna stock UHC. Yeah, I've never had it. So keep at it, Rita, and then tell me, because you will be so, like, there's been so many moments in my life, in my career, that I've been so proud of myself. And I was thinking about this last week, is that like being proud of yourself is like the highest form of like self-care, because the majority of the time, like if you're working UHC, like all of these things are so hard. And when you finally accomplish it and like you sit back and you're just like, holy shit, like I cannot believe I did that. So the hardest things in life are usually the things that you're going to be most proud of. So I'm not telling you to do that like in angst. I'm telling you that as somebody who has done that. Like I just remember when we got our contracts and I was just like, it was like one of my proudest moments because I worked so hard for it. And I've been told no so many times, but I didn't accept no. So I'm sending love because I get it. Getting credentialed in 2 states, Washington and California. Yeah. So is there anything that you need to know regarding billing in 2 states? So you have to be very mindful, and this is coming up a lot, and this is new. Some of those states, Washington State has a residency requirement, and that the dietitian is supposed to be located in that state. So you do need to do some research. So if you are not in that state physically, you do want to do some research to see if there is a residency requirement. So like certain states, like Illinois and Washington, like they are very specific that if you call them and ask them, they will tell you the provider needs to be located in that state. So that's the most important thing that you need to do, is that like that you have dotted your I's and crossed your T's from a legal standpoint. And obviously I can't tell you how to do that, but I can tell you that that is becoming an issue, with many dietitians. So you guys have to do your due diligence before you guys open up shop. Just something to be considered. Rita says sole prop. So yeah, so Rita, yeah, if you change from sole prop to an LLC, I'm not saying not to do that. I think it's better to know what to expect than what not to expect. And so I didn't know that that was going to be such a problem, because it seemed like all you needed to do was fill out a form. You will have to recontract. A lot of times you're already credentialed, but they need to issue you a new contract. And in the meantime, you cannot bill with that. It becomes an issue with your EIN. So like for Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield, something that was supposed to be very straightforward, like my team didn't get paid for like 7 months on any of the claims because we were posting, that new EIN was posting as out of network. So it's the one thing that I am like, I say like, I'm opinionated about a lot more things than I say, but it is something that I am very opinionated about and very vocal about because I don't think people really realize that, because I didn't. So you will have to, yep. So Sam asked, what is the coaching program? So coaching program is $42.64 or 6 payments of $780. I apologize. I usually put the prices on. I didn't mean to not. And then you will get 10% off of whatever you choose. So if you choose the payment plan, it would do 10% off all 6 of your payments. And then it would give you an additional month of coaching. Most dietitians go into my membership, and the membership, depending upon where you're coming in, is anywhere from $150 to $297 a month. So you get an additional month, plus you get 10% off. So cool. Okay. Webinar, awesome. You guys are amazing. Awesome. Wanted to give them codes. I wanted to give them the codes and it won't go towards the deductible. So if you're struggling with the deductibles, I would, I don't say this because I wrote it, I would tell you the truth. One of the best purchases of your insurance career would be my cheat sheet. And my cheat sheet will give you all of the codes and it will show you how it won't go towards the deductible. So if you bill something that goes towards the deductible, it means that it hit the medical side of the policy. Just make sure I hear you saying cost share with eating disorders. Okay, we did that one. Just want to make sure my mouse went up. Mostly go up on YouTube. Okay, cool. Yep. So it will go up on YouTube. Jude's asked, I primarily use group programs in practice. Yep, there's a way. Yep. So you can easily bill for group coaching programs. That's something that I teach in my coaching program. I have a whole webinar and whole worksheet that walks you step by step through that. But that's certainly something you can bill for and you can bill insurance for. But remember, if you have 100 people in the group, you have to document for 100 people. So it sounds like it could be a cash cow, but the reality is, like, as you guys have learned, like, things that sound like easy are not. But yes, we teach you how to do, like, anything you can think of in the world of business. Like, we'll teach you how to do it, or we'll have a webinar that's on it. So but yeah, I can't think of a topic that we have not covered or we will not covered. 97804. Yep. So 97804 is a group code. 1 unit code, 30 minutes units billed. And then it is, it's usually a 2 unit max per day. So like you could bill for CFYI. Yep. Yeah. You said, yes, you guys beat me to it. 2 units per day. Yep. Yeah. Medicaid is completely different state by state. That is, so I only teach in my coaching program, Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Medicare, in UHC, UMR, in any umbrella plans. We're having a TRICARE specialist come in next week, Erin Skinner. She's a dietitian. So like I'll always try to bridge the gap if I can, but I cannot teach Medicaid because it's different in every state. So I don't know it or else I would teach it. So cool. Let's see, bariatric. Yeah, a ton of bariatric group coaching programs. Yeah, and then remember Medicare actually covers groups too. G02701. So great coverage on that. Cooking classes, as long as there's MNT, like the same with like shopping store tours, you can bill for those as well, as long as you're billing with codes that represent MNT. So, so there just has to be MNT in there. Where do we find residency? Yeah, residency requirements you have to call and ask. So there's a difference between being located in Massachusetts and serving patients in Texas. If you're located in Massachusetts and you're serving patients in a different state, you're not contracting in Texas. You're billing through a national plan and you're not pretending to actually have residency in that state. For example, like we can be in Connecticut and bill all of the states as long as we have licensure rules. We're not going and establishing residency and securing a physical location in that state. So don't worry about that part. First, I need to start with start with them all. I get that question all the time. Like, just let it rip. Like, you know what I mean? Like, plus, like, you're not very marketable if you just have Cigna. right? Like if you're just like, I'm in network with Cigna, it's like really hard to go to the doctors and be like, you don't probably want to start marketing to any of doctors or anybody until you have an Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield product under you, because a lot of times it's like, it falls on deaf ears because so many people have Anthem. So I would say kind of starting there is the best point. So go all in, just like, you know what I mean? Like get a cup of coffee, get some stimulants, like sit down and just like let it rip. And like, remember, it comes back to your why. If your goal is to increase accessibility, it also wouldn't make sense. I know everybody wants to tell me otherwise, but if you cherry pick your best pictures, like, are you really then increasing accessibility to care, on all levels? So we'll come back to your why, but I will credential with anybody that takes me, like anybody. So like we don't discriminate. You guys are amazing. Okay, cool. Thanks, Marky Mark. So that's very cool. Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't know if we have an Anthem plan or not. It will depend on your state. So Anthem is in 13 states. So it's like California, Virginia, Minneapolis. I'm sorry, not Minnesota, Virginia, Maine, New Hampshire. So that would be Anthem, but your ability to credential with one Blue Cross Blue Shield product will allow you to bill all. So you don't have to be in with Anthem to bill Blue Cross Blue Shield of Highmark. You have to know that Highmark is going to play out different than that one, but don't worry about that piece, because generally these are national products, with exceptions that have like a demographic rider, like an HMO plan. But no, you could bill, like, as long as you follow licensure rules, like you can bill any plan you want, like no problem at all. Moving new states, do I need an LLC? Yep, definitely want to wait. So somebody just quoted me in one of the Facebook pages, but one of my famous quotes with my coaching programs is to slow down to speed up. And like, if I had a tattoo, which I have none of, that's what it would say, like across my face, please slow down to speed up. So you just want to be mindful of that. So I wouldn't, like, a lot of times I won't take people even into my coaching program. If they tell me that, I'll say like, here's the, like, I'll have a call with them. I'll say, do X, Y, and Z. Here is my email. Like, once those are done, like, let's get ready to rock and roll. But like, I don't want anybody to waste any time. Just, because time is the most valuable thing you have. So, once you move, you have a physical address, because each state will be different. Like if you're in like a state like New York, you need a PLLC, not an LLC. If you're in a state like California, you're going to be blocked out by certain insurance companies if you are an LLC. So you just have to be mindful of the turf. Is there a way to predict the number of sessions? It depends what you're billing. So if you're billing under preventative, most of the plans, like, I'm not even saying this to like sell insurance, but almost all of our plans have unlimited visits. And on my cheat sheet, I outline all of the units that I know by payer. So like Aetna will only allow up to 4 units, where Medicare will allow 8. So like, I really like I said, I do my best to give you like everything I have, and like that's on the cheat sheet. So I go through each one and I say, in my experience, like, we bill this one, this is what we get, this is what we get. So so good. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, the all you have to do for the cheat sheet is, if you just go to Reimbursement Dietitian, it's just in the store. But if it would be helpful, I'll send out when we send out the replay, or where it's going to be, I'll do a bunch of resources. I think it also would be helpful for you guys to have a link to the YouTube channel, because we update that every week. And I generally add in questions that you guys have asked, like somewhere in some form, and I go more long form. So I have a lot of things to say about GLPs. I have a lot of things to say about, just kind of talk a little bit about Nourish and Faye, not towards them directly, but kind of just so, yeah. So that will be coming out soon. So, okay. So I have a dinner reservation. So I'm going to go put my shoes on and find Maya, who is in the other room. And thanks, Marky Mark. And so Mark just linked it for you. Thank you. And then if you guys need anything, let me know. And then we'll put this up. We'll probably have to chop it up into 2 pieces, because it looks like it's 2.5 hours long. Nope, there's no advantage if you are credentialed. I was credentialed with every single insurance company at Yale New Haven Hospital, and then I had to start all over again. So it might go a little bit quicker, but like, I just credentialed a dietitian on my team. We got a contract that was effective for her in September, and it's still not it's just, we still can't bill for her. So like, there's no rhyme or reason. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. Like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. And then if you're interested in coaching, just make sure you put in an application. I'll link everything when we send it out by Sunday, and then I'll do all the calls next week. Okay. So, well, thanks for joining me, guys, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye, guys.